if Trump gets in the office, man, that's going to be a tough day.
I think I would try and start looking for other residencies in different countries.
I think the divide is going to grow even stronger.
I wouldn't feel unsafe, but I would feel disappointed in us as a country.
I would feel relieved that Kamala won, but not satisfied.
It's crunch time in this election, and for young voters, the stakes feel high. In a new Stay Tuned poll, 50% of GenZers say they're going to vote for Vice President Harris, in comparison to 33% who say they'll vote for former President Trump. And how they'll feel depending on which candidate wins is very different, with a third of young voters saying they'd feel scared if Donald Trump won the election. And that number is higher among women.
It's just going to make me very nervous, unsettled. My foundation is kind of shaky when he's in office.
Votes feel personal, with 36% of GenZers saying it would put a strain on a relationship if a friend voted for Donald Trump.
If I found out that one of my friends was voting for Trump, I feel like I would be a little sad. I think that would affect our relationship kind of negatively.
On the flip side, only 12% said the same if they found out a friend was voting for Harris.
All of my friends are actually going to vote for Kamala Harris. I've decided not to let politics rule my life.
A majority of GenZers think that Vice President Harris has the temperament to serve effectively as president, while less than half said the same about former President Trump.
I think we need a good person at heart representing the country more than we would need a good politician.
But for people who support Trump, some say temperament isn't a big deal.
To me, I don't think I elect the president based on whether or not he's a good person. I elect the president based on whether or not he has good policies.
I think both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are not well suited to be president of the United States, and I wish we could return to candidates with integrity like Barack Obama and John McCain.
When it comes down to how Gen Z is going to vote, it's not just about temperament, with 32% citing inflation and cost of living as their top issue, followed by threats to democracy and abortion.
The economy sucks. I currently work 2 jobs. I work 1 full-time job and then another part-time. Then I also go to school full-time.
When Trump was president was when I first got my driver's license, and I could afford gas pretty easily.
I do think that with either candidate, I'm really hopeful that it will improve.
And abortion is a red line with a lot of young voters. 42% say they'll only vote for a candidate who shares their views.
So one of my biggest fears is having a child that I don't want through means that I wish didn't happen to me. It makes me very upset that, Trump is trying to make that just a state issue.
But abortion is one thing that I'm very adamant about. We're going the right direction with putting it to the states. Pro-lifers have more of a safe place in certain states. And those that desire abortions or are pro-choice, they have states where they can go as well.
Fall of Roe was definitely like an eye-opening moment for me. And it was just so scary because, thinking upon that, what other rights could be taken away?
And I voted for Kamala Harris.
Something Gen Z says doesn't really impact their vote: celeb endorsements. But opinions from friends and family and endorsements from political leaders actually make a difference for them.
Donald Trump was not my first choice this election. My first choice was RFK Jr. But when he came out about a month or 2 ago endorsing Donald Trump, that's who I decided to really follow.
Regardless of who wins, young voters say they're confident their votes will be counted accurately in their state.
I feel that the elections will be fair. I just don't think people will be happy with the outcome, and they're going to challenge it no matter what.
For this election, I'm not too optimistic. I'm not excited about either candidate, and that's very unfortunate. This is only my second time voting, and I'm really hoping at some point in my lifetime I'll be excited to vote for one of the presidential candidates.